Hello and welcome to today's GlobalSign webinar. Today we will be discussing why it's time to replace your Microsoft CA. I'm Dan Farrell with the GlobalSign marketing team, and I want to thank you all for joining us today. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our presenter for today, Sid Desai. He's the Director of Sales Engineering and is responsible for leading a team of engineers that help our customers implement advanced managed PKI solutions. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, you could submit them using the questions box in your GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll keep track and try to answer them all at the end of the webinar. You can also follow us on Twitter at GlobalSign, where we'll be sharing follow-up materials, and after today's presentation, everything will be up there. And now I'll hand it over to Sid.
All right, Dan, thank you so much for that. And welcome everybody to this webinar and for taking the time out of your busy Wednesday schedules. I really do appreciate you guys joining, and I'm very excited to be presenting this topic today. So we have a few topics that I would like to cover today, and my goal at the end of it is to enable you with just enough knowledge to start thinking about replacing your Microsoft CA. Now, I understand that we may not be able to cover each and every detail on this topic today, but I'll be more than happy to schedule time with each one of you individually if needed to go over this and much more. But for now, let's get started. All right, so the first item on the docket is to go over some of the advantages and disadvantages of using a Microsoft CA. Now, before I get into why you should replace your Microsoft CA, it is helpful to revisit some of the reasons you're probably using one in the first place. Now, arguably, the main reason for running a Microsoft CA, or working with any kind of CA for that matter, is because you want to secure your infrastructure. It's because you want to implement PKI. Now, PKI is an increasingly popular option these days. It always was, actually, and for the longest time, we as organizations have tried multiple ways to replace our passwords with some kind of multi-factor authentication, to digitally sign and encrypt our emails, to replace our wet ink signatures with digital signatures, to secure our servers via SSL, and to finally control which users, machines, mobile devices, and other things can access our internal networks. Of course, running a Microsoft CA isn't your only option if you want to use PKI technology, but here are some of the unique benefits to use one anyway. For organizations operating a Windows environment, being able to leverage the certificate template information already included in the Microsoft certificate services can make running a Microsoft CA extremely appealing. Now, since Active Directory and Microsoft certificate services are connected, you can seamlessly register and provision certificates to all your domain-connected objects based on group policies. IT admins love group policies. IT admins love automation. So auto-enrollment and silent installation makes the certificate deployment process very appealing for the IT administrators. The end users, they're happy too. They get to have all the benefits of using the digital certificates. Now, the other benefit of using a Microsoft CA is because it's free. A lot of people say it's free. I'm going to use it. There's no cost for me in running it, and that's fine. Microsoft CA services are included with the Windows Enterprise Server, and in fact, we did a survey a little while ago, and we noticed that a whopping 70% of respondents cited this as their main reason for running a Microsoft CA. 70%, that's huge. So I guess it's clear that there are some benefits of running your own Microsoft CA, but let's look at the other side of the coin. Let's look at some of the negatives, shall we? Deploying and managing a Microsoft CA can be complicated. Not only does one need specialized skills, but to do so securely requires expensive hardware. Separating operational practices from other operational infrastructure adds costs. Any one of you who has worked with a PKI consultant before, or perhaps you are one, you know how much they cost. People who have crypto experiences today are in high demand, and PKI experts especially are very expensive to hire. Now, while it's true that Microsoft CA services are included with the Windows Enterprise server, and there isn't a fee for using the services or the certificates that you issue, to say that running a Microsoft CA is free is kind of oversimplifying matters, and sometimes can be misleading. Consider the hardware costs for a second. Crypto devices such as HSMs, the hardware security modules, needed to store your root or signing private keys, or even having a dedicated server for Microsoft CA is very expensive. You'll likely need at least one full-time employee to maintain the certificate templates, maintain the hardware security modules, maintain the private key material, the server patches, updates, security, distribution of the roots, managing revocation services such as CRL and OCSP, and a whole lot more. Now, IT admins have a very specialized knowledge. Not all of them are PKI aware. So the need to hire an external consultant or somebody with the PKI expertise is there. Now, of course, there's also the annual maintenance and support costs that goes with maintaining and managing this infrastructure. The HSMs that you'll be using will be provided from HSM providers, and they don't cost for free. And there are also other potential costs depending on the situation. One of them is the cost to run your own trusted root program. So in cases where you do need to add a public trust, for example, if you want to do SMIME for external email, you definitely need your internal root to be trusted on a global network. GlobalSign offers services for our trusted root program partners, and these services are not cheap. For heavily regulated industries, you may also need to consider compliance audits and a secure facility to house your CA operations. You can't just put your root keys on some offline server and consider yourself compliant. So I guess it's clear that running a Microsoft CA has some fantastic automation and certificate management benefits, but it can be complicated to deploy and more expensive than expected. So what are your other options? Well, the only other option in that case is to run a managed PKI service. Start using a hosted CA. A hosted CA reduces internal IT administration. It reduces risks associated with managing, maintaining, and securing an in-house PKI infrastructure. And hosted CAs utilize strict web trust audits with industry standard documented certificate policies and practices. Let's take a look at one such hosted CA offering, the GlobalSign Auto-Enrollment Gateway. GlobalSign has a hosted solution that allows you to keep the benefits of a Microsoft Certificate Services and AD without having to run your own Microsoft CA. The Auto-Enrollment Gateway is a software service that acts as a connector between the GlobalSign SaaS services and the organization's Windows environment. So why would you want to use AEG instead of running your own Microsoft CA? Well, the benefits are twofold. First, you get to keep the benefits of using a Microsoft CA and Active Directory, so you can still have all those certificate templates that you pre-configured when you were using Microsoft CA. You can automatically provision certificates to all your domain join objects. We still support a range of certificate templates that come default with Microsoft CA and those use cases, but definitely not limited to that. We can definitely support a lot more custom use cases now than ever before. Use cases such as 802.1x, certificates for firewalls such as Palo Alto or Zscaler are gaining in popularity, and GlobalSign can offer you these types of certificates. Now, you still get to control which objects within your network receive which types of certificates by configuring everything in your Active Directory group policies. So you, at the end of the day, still have control over which devices and which endpoints have certificates or not, while we maintain all the infrastructure on our end. Now, the second and the major benefit here is you can outsource your CA services to a trusted third party, the keyword being trusted. Now, GlobalSign manages the security, high availability, CA operations, CRL, and revocation services, ensuring that you meet your SLAs and your compliance requirements. We can help you liberate your IT to focus on core competencies rather than cryptography and certificate management stuff. You can easily perform certificate lifecycle management actions, which is deployment of certificates, renewal of certificates, or revocation directly from the AEG portal rather than having to go through manual processes typically involved in the Microsoft CA. And you still get to have delegated administration functions, such as the ability to delegate roles and responsibilities among staff members, detailed reporting, and logging capabilities. So I mentioned before that running your own Microsoft CA can be expensive. Let's take a quick peek at how expensive. Now here's a great comparison on the 5-year total cost of ownership of a Microsoft CA compared to a hosted solution such as AEG. Now let's look at some major differences. The first is the hardware costs. Now running your own in-house CA will require more infrastructure than you will not need for a cloud-based solution. HSMs are not cheap, HSMs are very expensive, so you have to add those costs. If you add high availability, in your case, that adds the cost twice right there. And also a full-time employee costs for running your own CA, which is estimated to be around $80,000 per year. If you hire an outside consultant, it gets very expensive there again. And finally, that brings us to the 5-year total cost of ownership. As you can see, although you are paying for certificates with AEG, the overhead and management of a Microsoft CA is more than double that of AEG. Now, this is not to mention the other possible costs that you may incur, including a trusted root for public trust, compliance audits, and having a secure facility. Now, GlobalSign can provide this TCO comparison sheet to you for free, so just contact us at the end of the webinar, and we will be more than happy to send you this spreadsheet. As far, so far I've only been talking about the benefits about AEG in terms of a one-on-one replacement for a Microsoft CA. But it's important to note that AEG offers some additional functions as well. First is the ability to issue publicly trusted certificates. GlobalSign as a CA, our roots are embedded in virtually every root store, meaning a certificate issued from a GlobalSign public root will automatically be trusted on your device. Now, this comes up a lot with the SMIME use cases for organizations that want to secure their external email as well as internal. Another key aspect, especially given the recent trends around enterprise mobility and endpoint expansion, is that you can also issue certificates for non-domain join objects. AEG offers a SCEP server function, which is simple certificate enrollment protocol, and supports the ACME protocol as well, making it a true certificate issuance engine, just not limited to your Windows environment. All right, so you may have a question. What about mobile devices, right? Well, GlobalSign has a direct integration with the AirWatch and MobileIron MDMs, which is the mobile device management systems. Now, if your organization is using one, these integrations bypasses AEG altogether, talks directly to our APIs, and the same ones that AEG uses. So to have this integration in place, if you are using an MDM, is very simple. Now, AEG can also act as a SCEP server interface. Our latest release supports multiple flavors of SCEP. So even if you're not using an MDM, which a lot of small to medium-sized organizations are not using, you can still configure and link the AEG SCEP interface to certain apps that you can use to provision certificates to mobile devices. Now, each SCEP flavor is a little bit different, so there are some configurations involved, but we're more than happy to talk about that at a later date. The next question we get all the time is, what about networking devices? People have networking devices such as routers, wireless printers, wireless cameras. Well, to a certain extent, you can still use AEG to issue certificates to any device that practically supports SCEP, including a networking device such as a router. Now, there are multiple flavors of SCEP out there, like I mentioned before, so this is definitely something you have to configure manually to a certain extent. You're not going to have the full automation capability that you will have in a pure Windows environment. But the benefit is you can still use that single system to provision certificates to all devices, be it Windows, Linux, Macs, or even networking devices. Well, the third most asked question is, what about non-Windows servers? Most enterprise servers out there are non-Windows based. So, if your company is using a Linux or an Nginx-based servers, we can definitely help you there. The benefit is that AEG supports the Acme protocol, so you can automate certificate deployment to certain Linux and Nginx servers through AEG. So you don't have to have another system in place to provision certificates to these different types of servers. So going back to AEG being a certificate issuance engine, you can also use it for use cases where automation isn't desired. For example, certificate request orders from non-Windows endpoints that need to be approved by an admin before being issued. In this case, orders can be placed using a manual enrollment website. You can make this portal available to anyone who wants to request a certificate outside of the normal enrollment procedure, and they then have the option to enter a CSR and enroll a supported SCEP-compatible device. And lastly, all orders need to be approved by the admin. So this kind of provides an additional layer of security that you would need. After all, you wouldn't want anyone within the company who is not part of the domain to be able to request all kinds of certificates. So having this approval process really comes in handy. So as stated before, AEG supports a wide range of certificate templates and use cases, including the ones that are most commonly available with a Microsoft CA. Once you're ready to make the switch to a hosted PKI service, you can reuse some of those pre-configured certificate templates that you used with your Microsoft CA. All you have to do at that point is reconfigure the certificate template settings and permissions so that every single enrollment that happens through the use of that specific template can then be routed to AEG. Now, as a PKI company, we can also work with you on some of those non-standard templates and use cases that you may have. And these are usually custom templates or custom EKU projects that you need specifically for certain authentication apps. In that case, we welcome you to come speak to us about these customizations, and we'll be more than happy to help you out. All right, so let's take a quick peek at how AEG works. Now, this is an animation slide, so I'm going to try and go through it a little bit slowly so that it renders correctly on your end. So every typical installation where we deploy AEG has 4 key components that work together to ensure that the right digital certificates are provisioned to the right endpoints. First off, you have the AEG software itself that runs on a domain-joined Windows server. The server can be a Windows Server 2008 R2, although 2012 R2 is the norm these days, and we recommend that. Next, you have the Active Directory servers or your domain controllers that allows admins to manage and store information about the resources in the domain. You then have your endpoints, which are your users, your routers, workstations, web servers, and so on. And then the fourth component is the GlobalSign Certificate Center, or the GCC, that sits on top of a robust certificate issuance platform that we have in our SaaS service. This component is the only one that manufactures the certificates that your endpoints use. All of these 4 components are important. One cannot operate without the presence of another. Now, 3 of these components that are shown here reside on-premise at your site in your infrastructure, and the 4th one, the GCC, which is the GlobalSign Certificate Center, is on our cloud. Now that we have had a clear understanding on the components involved, let's look at how this all works together. So at first, the endpoints are pre-configured with a group policy. This policy guides the endpoints, which can be a workstation requesting a client auth certificate, a user requesting for an SMIME certificate, to essentially connect to the AEG server to pull the certificate enrollment policy, the CEP. Now this happens securely over HTTPS. The AEG then sends a request to the Active Directory via LDAP to get a list of certificate templates these endpoints can enroll for, and then in step number 4, sends that list over to the endpoints with the location of the CA where the endpoints can grab these certificates from. Now that the endpoints have the policies in hand, they can connect to the AEG server again, this time to request for the actual certificates. The AEG, in turn, can impersonate these requests and coming in from the endpoints, and then generate an API message with the said requests, and then sends all of this to the GlobalSign Certificate Center for processing. On the GCC, once the processing is complete, in the final steps, which is 7 and 8, the backend processes all the requests, usually within seconds, and then sends an API response back, along with the certificate to be installed on the endpoints as requested. So this entire process takes place over a few seconds and can be fully automated by setting up the endpoints to automatically grab the certificates using group policies. There's no need for you to install any kind of endpoint agent on your computers. Everything is supported through the existing Windows protocols, so we don't require customers to install or push out endpoint agents on each of these clients, which is a huge benefit for IT administrators. All right. A lot of you have different types of architecture. Some of you may have multiple forests, multiple domains. Well, AEG can basically accommodate every type of architecture, from single forest, single domain, to a multiple domain, multiple forest. As long as there's cross-domain and cross-forest trust between them, we only need one instance of AEG to be running, which is hosted at the original root domain. Now, we don't see it every often, but if you do have a situation where you do not have a cross-forest trust between, or cross-domain trust between your domains, you just need to install another instance of AEG. Now, at the end of the day, both these instances of AEG still talk to the same backend account, so even though you may think that you have two servers to maintain, the backend infrastructure is the same. All right, so that was a bit of a technical overview on AEG and what types of architecture it supports. As I said before, we may not be able to cover all types of questions or comments on this presentation, but if you have any questions about any of the details that we talked about today, please do not hesitate to ask during the Q&A period. I am noticing that a few of you are asking questions, so we'll take that in just a bit. But to sum it up, AEG offers you an alternative to running your own Microsoft CA, which, as we've shown here before, can be very complex and expensive to run and doesn't support non-domain join endpoints. You still get to keep the automation and management benefits with AEG, but gain the additional benefits of working with a trusted third-party CA and a very robust certificate issuance engine. Now, as our PKI infrastructure evolves and we move more towards the IoT infrastructure, which is industrial IoT or Internet of Things, we at GlobalSign are also trying to scale our CA platform to support these next generation infrastructures. So whereas our current platform can support hundreds of thousands of certificate issuances today, in the future we'll be able to support millions of endpoints, whether these endpoints are IoT devices or connected endpoints. And as we like to say at GlobalSign, PKI should enable your business, not be your business. And with that, let's get Dan back on the line to get some of your questions answered.
All right. Thank you, Sid. So we hope this information has helped you learn why you should replace your internal Microsoft CA and look towards a hosted solution. And yeah, like you said, we did have some questions come in, so let's go over them. So first one we have here is, which MDMs does this connect to?
Okay, that's a good question. So right now, out of the box, we have a direct integration with the AirWatch and the Mobile Iron Cloud MDMs. We are releasing an integration with the Mobile Iron Core solution in a month or so. So at that point, we'll have two most widely used MDM systems that we support. But like I said in the presentation, we do have a SCEP interface. So if you have an MDM such as Intune, for example, or even Mass 360, we may be able to work with you to support those MDMs as well through that SCEP interface. We just have to go into some detailed configurations, as there's no direct integration that we have with these MDMs today. So yeah, we do support these MDMs, and we're hoping to support a lot more in the future. So.
Okay. Looks like we have another sort of compatibility question. Is this compatible with all Windows servers?
As a matter of fact, as the latest AEG release came out a couple weeks ago, and we can definitely support all kinds of servers. Now, traditionally, the auto-enrollment bits were only supported by Windows servers or Active Directory forests that are on a 2008 R2 schema or above. But for devices that are not really at this level, if you still have like any old devices that you want certificates for, we are developing a feature that will enable you to provision certificates on these older devices. So yes, we are compatible with most Windows servers. And if you're still on 2003 Windows Server, it's 2016. So most organizations do have plans to update their server infrastructure in some way or the other. So we're definitely compatible with all of those.
All right. So we have an existing customer who says they use us for SMIME certificates, and if they wanted to start using AEG, can those certificates be carried over?
Well, that's a great question. Well, thank you for being a customer, first of all. And yes, the answer is, in one word, yes. You can definitely reuse those certificates again. All you have to do is, right now, if you're ordering these certificates through manually through our GCC portal, once AEG is installed, all we have to do is route AEG to that same account that you're using, and we'll be able to kind of reuse some of those existing certificates that you have left in your account. So yes, it's definitely possible. And also, one more thing I want to add is the use cases that you can work on with AEG can definitely evolve and scale over time. So if you want to, start with an SMIME use case today, but maybe you're thinking that, okay, down the line, I want to do 802.1x or some kind of client-based authentication, or maybe, certificates for routers and so on. You can start small. You can start with a single use case for a few users and eventually scale up to hundreds of thousands of use cases or endpoints if you want to. So this solution is definitely scalable, and it can work for a few hundred users to across hundreds of thousands of endpoints.
Okay. All right. We've got a lot of questions, but we're sort of running short on time, so I'm going to do one more question. It says, are certificates issued from a shared root, and how does that work?
That's a very good question. So typically with our AEG solutions, we have a dedicated root for each customer, and this is a dedicated root just for you. So you as an organization will have your own private hierarchy, or if you are willing to go with a trusted root model, you will have your own trusted root hierarchy that we will run, manage, and maintain for you. Now, we do have a shared hierarchy, which is a private hierarchy that we use or we can offer you, but this is a shared hierarchy, so multiple customers will be using this hierarchy. The root certificates that will come from this shared hierarchy on a private model are not trusted by default, so you will have to push out these roots across all devices. But most organizations, really want their own kind of custom root. When they're working on use cases that involve things like, SSL inspection or client authentication or private, 802.1x type use cases, they typically would want to have their own private hierarchy, and we can definitely create these for you at our data center.
All right. Yeah, so that's going to be all the time that we have for today. If we didn't get to your question, we'll definitely be in contact with you shortly. And like I said at the beginning of the webinar, we'll be sending out a recording as well as the slide deck and all the materials that you'll need to get switched over from Microsoft CA. So thank you for attending the webinar, and have a great day.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, everybody, and talk to you later.